We are celebrating the World Environmental Day, which is a very important day. It has been observed since 1974 worldwide, and the guests today are very well known in Kosovo, but also in the Western Balkan region and also beyond. So the first speaker is Viola von Kramon-Taubadel. She's a special rapporteur on Kosovo. She's a European parliamentarian. And the second person we have here is Dardan Abarasi. He's from INDEP, and he can tell us more about the situation in Kosovo. So my first question is actually for Dardan. So Dardan, can you tell us a little bit more about the main environmental challenges in Kosovo?
Well, thank you, Annette, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here today to mark this important date, and especially to be here with Ms. von Kramon, which has been a very important voice of Kosovo in the European Union, a very needed voice for Kosovo. And I also want to thank you for organizing this webinar. So when we speak about environment, of course, the first thing that, or the first word that comes to our minds in Kosovo is the word challenge, because it really is a topic of challenge in Kosovo. And I would say that it has to do, first of all, with the policy planning, in which on one hand, we have a strategy for the protection of the environment, but on the other hand, the same government has a strategy on energy, which mainly focuses on the energy from lignite sources. So I think the first challenge for Kosovo is to really see and prioritize environment in terms of strategic and policy planning. And another problem is, it has to do, of course, with the air quality and soil quality and water quality. In terms of the soil quality, for example, we have a lot of problems with the waste management in Kosovo. We as civil society have been advocating a lot for a new law on treatment of the industrial waste, which is very important for the protection of rivers from pollution, and also for the continuation of improving and incentivizing electric and hybrid vehicles for the transport sector, but ultimately also to have an energy transition that goes away from fossil fuels and from other pollutants and to a new green energy system. On a positive note, I would say that the new National Energy and Climate Plan, which is currently being drafted in the governmental level, is going to sort of try to combine all the measures that has to do with energy and climate into a perspective that also protects the environment. And in this process, all of the, I would say, main civil society organizations are invited and are part of it. We've been lucky enough to be part of two thematic groups in this initiative. And I think it's a very optimistic news for Kosovo in terms of trying to improve the policy level and trying to improve the strategic orientation of Kosovo in this field. Definitely, I think that Kosovo and all the other Western Balkan member states, states should really try to prioritize more on the environment. As you know, Chapter 27 of the integration is one of the most challenging and most costly, let's say, chapters of the European integration. So as early as we start, it's going to be easier for us to then be ready and join the EU.
Thanks, Dardan, for this overview. Viola, if I may ask you, the European Union has a very strong presence here in Kosovo. You yourself, you have been vocal about political developments, but I also know that environment is very, very close to your heart. You are from the Green Party. Can you tell us a little about how the EU is assisting Kosovo in overcoming these environmental challenges? And Dardan has already mentioned it. Of course, we all know the coal mine, we all know the air pollution, especially in the winter months, just as one example. So can you tell us a bit about the EU assistance and when it comes to policy, but also I mean, in very concrete terms when it comes to projects?
Thank you, Annette, and thanks to all of you in the EU delegation who raised awareness for this very important topic, and thanks to Ardan to already mark a little bit the territory we are talking about and what is needed to, let's say, improve in a broader sense. I think it is important to reflect that it must be in our interest, in our European Union's interest, to improve what you have said, the soil quality, the air quality, the water quality, because only when people feel that the well-being of the human being, of the citizens, is being improved, they fight for more. They fight for improving of the economical situation. They fight for also the improving the democratic rights and so on. So we need to set up the framework, the policy framework for having, let's say, a healthy way of life. And at the moment, it is really striking, especially in winter time, how difficult it is to breathe. I mean, literally to breathe. And this smoke in the air, this emissions in the air, they are so obvious that, of course, the life expectancy is much lower around this coal-fired power plant than in other parts of the world, in other regions of the European Union. And that's definitely something we have to fix. So we have to put a lot of, let's say, investment, but also technology and also personal ambition into this big factor of climate protection, but also of compliance with EU regulation. And you have mentioned the Western Balkan states, which are all, let's say, not very progressive, let's put it this way, in the question of state aid in terms of advanced energy supply, but Kosovo is by far almost the worst. And so this would be up, hopefully, on the one of the high priority issues on the agenda of the new government to really tackle this question. I hope we have talked and we have seen the situation with the two coal-fired power plants. This needs to be fixed. We have to consult and advise in which way we can overcome the situation. Yeah. So, of course, Kosovo is now technically and also formally integrated in this European set of ENSA, or what was the name for this, which is a big, pardon me? NCO, exactly, which is a big step forward, yeah. And this is also a big signal, signal towards sovereignty, energy independence, and we should use this, yeah. So we should use this kind of energy interdependence or energy integration in the regional market to really look what is needed, where is the consumption, and where is the current status, and what could we maybe cover by renewables, clean investment, and where do we need additional, I don't know, whatever, let's say bridge technology, yeah. Mm-hmm. And how we going to do this, how we going to finance this, how we going to put pressure in the broader society in line with many NGOs. We need the NGOs, we need the civil society, we need the awareness of the people to put forward this issue. So this, I guess, the climate change, the energy supply, the investment into renewables, decentralization, also a new energy feed-in tariff, I guess it would be needed also to become more attractive for foreign direct investment. We have seen this in many other countries. It works very well. And so this is something which needs to be debated and discussed with the new government, but always with the civil society, and the driving forces for this issue is definitely the civil society in Kosovo.
Julia, you mentioned very important key words. Just maybe to add that the European Union, we are financing new filters that will cost almost 80 million, and that is really meant, and you've said it nicely, I mean, to bridge also, because of course, I mean, it's not possible to just shut down a coal power plant when the green technology is not yet here. I mean, everyone needs electricity, so there is also a transition period, and but to help a little bit, and I do believe that it will help a lot actually to reduce the pollution, so that the air quality over the winter months, I mean, that has reasons why it's in winter worse than in the summer, but just to reduce this huge air pollution, what we are experiencing here. So I think that will really help in the next years until more green energy and more green economy is actually also used here. Another very important topic, and I know that you have been involved in that, and it goes far beyond Kosovo in the Western Balkans. It's actually really tackling the European Union countries, is the Green Deal. If you could very briefly just say, what is it about? It has been introduced by von der Leyen in December. And does this Green Deal, which is very ambitious, but it's also a long-term strategy, what does it mean for places like Kosovo, countries in the Western Balkan who have this desire to join the Union? What does that mean, the Green Deal? Isn't it really a big thing?
Was it, sorry, was it a question to me?
Yeah, the question is
sorry.
to you. Yeah, just to explain us a little bit about the Green Deal.
Well, the idea is mainly to decarbonize the industry, to transform the industry in the CO2-free industry, which will take a while, and you will have winners and losers. So we have to make sure within Kosovo that Kosovo is not a loser in terms of financial debt and financial, how to say, additional cost, of course. So what we have to provide is to include Kosovo in the so-called Just Transition Fund. So besides incentives for industry to transform their sectors into a CO2-free, for example, I visited today a steel company in Lower Saxony, and they're in big trouble, of course, not just because of Corona, but because they're investing 3 billion euros just in one location, in one company, to transform their heating system in a CO2 neutral heating system. But this 3 billion will never pay off if we do not have a regulation within the domestic market, which more or less protects the quality and the higher criteria. But what does it mean for Kosovo and the other Western Balkan states if we implement a so-called border adjustment tax? This will mean there's a high levy on all the products you would like to import into the European domestic market. So you need to get ready for this step, and you better get ready the sooner the better. Yeah? So what does this mean for Kosovo's industry? It means to look for alternatives in terms of energy supply, in terms of how whatever you can do on a centralized level, and how can you transform your energy supply, but all the other, let's say, factors of the procurement chain. And in terms of, we speak about circular economy within the Green Deal. This is very important. So we will probably require from all the imports to prove the recycling quotes, which is important because our resources are not unlimited, and we really have to put much more effort in the recycling of all the resources. We will see a shortage very soon, so the prices will rocket side if we do not put provisions in this. So there's biodiversity, there is hopefully a cap on CO2. We will have a CO2 pricing, which will be much more ambitious than it is the current price level now. As I said, it might then come up this carbon adjustment tax for all the products, but especially for energy intensive products. And this has, of course, implications for all the neighboring states which are importing or exporting whatsoever in the domestic or European domestic market. And so it is important for Kosovo to be informed and to make sure that you are not running in a let's say a stalemate where you're not able or just able to import and to sell to a much higher price than you're producing actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to add something here.
Yes, of course, go ahead. Yes.
I think the role of the European Union has been pivotal in pushing this transformation in the whole policy level, because sometimes, as Viola mentioned, our governments tend to be a little bit conservative and tend to be skeptical to the change. But when it comes as a target from the European Union, we see that they tend to push forward and to do something about achieving those targets. And the targets on renewable energy, for example, has shown us that even though the progress is not as much as we would like, there's still progress. And even though our institutions see it as fulfilling some criteria for the European integration or fulfilling some targets in the European integration process, it's still a progress that tends to trigger change and to also incentivize the market economy to also react to that and to see renewables as more competitive and more. So I think the attitude of the European Union towards Kosovo and the position of the European Union with conditionalities and also with fulfilling its own let's say commitments is very important for us as civil society as well as allies in this common cause of helping and improving also the energy transition and the Green New Deal also in this part of Europe.
Dadan, if I may ask you, because since Wednesday, Kosovo has a new government.
Yes.
And of course, it's not only civil society and the European Union, but most importantly, it is the government here in Kosovo. And just very briefly, as someone from Kosovo, you know the place very well, you are in the civil society. But do you feel that environmental protection and green economy is on the political agenda?
Well, for example, the first thing that the new government did is to put environment within the Ministry of Economy. The environment was part of the Ministry of Infrastructure in the last government. So we see this as a positive thing because of, for example, a lot of investments that were made in the renewable energy had to take different permits from the Ministry of Economic Development and also from the Ministry of Environment. So we hope it's going to be a little bit more synergy in there. So this is a positive thing. On the other hand, the new Prime Minister in his first address also mentioned the deforestation, mentioned the problems with polluting environment, air pollution, and also as some of the things that he would try to fix and he would have in his agenda. Overall, I think it's going to be dependent a lot on the priorities of the new government. If the new government has to travel a lot for the dialogue with Serbia, of course, that's going to take a lot of energy and maybe other sectorial policies will be left behind. But let's see. We really hope that we're going to see. It was part of Mr. Hoti's political party agenda to also improve the environment, and it is part of his commitment. How much energy the new government will have and how much time the new government will have to focus on the environmental problems and to prioritize them, I'm not sure about that.
So it's also up to you and your organization to push for that. And of course, also the European Union, we will do whatever we can. Maybe one more question to Viola. We are still within a pandemic. I know that you are in the moment in Germany. We here in Kosovo, the measures have been lifted. However, we also know that the virus is still around. And a bit ironically, what we have seen is that nature actually recovered in many places quite quickly, because suddenly everything was on hold. People stayed at home. And then we have seen this really fantastic pictures of dolphins in Venice, etc., etc. Viola, do you think, from a very personal point of view, do you think that we as human beings have learned something from this pandemic? So what is your take on that? Do you think people have realized how important nature is, and that when we're now restarting the economy, isn't it also an opportunity to perhaps go quicker into a more green economy and not going just back to the old normal, but also to apply a bit of a new normal when it comes to environmental protection and green economy?
That's a very good question. I mean, it's a very privileged situation for some of us to talk about this. I guess since we are still paid, luckily, by the European Parliament, it's very luxury to say, well, we're going to continue our work from home every day with this kind of video conferences, and it is actually technically possible. So for today, it was my first trip after 3 months going to the steel company. But I noticed actually you can do a lot from here. You can do a lot from your digital infrastructure. You do not have to travel to each and every meeting. You do not have to fly around the world to save the world, which is of course contradictory. And I think there was I guess for many of us, for many colleagues, a very important awareness, a point of awareness. And I could imagine that teleworking, home office, try to be more efficient, try to save also your personal time. While I was here, I do not have to pack my suitcases permanently. I'm not on the rush. I'm not on in the logistic phase for a permanent, let's say, status of my life. And this gives me much more time. So I think there was an experience for many, many people. And I could imagine seeing the sky more blue than ever before and noticing, oh, there is one airplane, which is almost rare now. And it has a big advantage for all of us. The air is definitely cleaner. It was more silent. There was less traffic everywhere, and people enjoyed it. Yeah, people really thought, "Ooh, yes, now we can breathe." And we live very close to the forest, and we see many more people coming to walk through the forest every day. Yeah, and this is something for the, let's say, public health. It's a big advantage, and people definitely save the time. and try to stay healthy and try to have this, let's say, also this connection to nature, which in our, let's say, region was only positive. But you ask for how, what lesson did we learn, and we will see. I mean, the pandemic is not over. Maybe we'll have a second phase. Maybe the recession will much worse than everyone has forecasted or foreseen. So I would be very cautious in giving any, let's say, too optimistic outlook. I'm not sure where we will stay in a year. There might be a high rate of unemployment. There might be, I don't know, more tensions coming up, not just in the US. So I would be very cautious in predicting anything at that point. I wish that people understand nature is not there with unlimited resources. We really have to save as much as we can, and we have to have an efficient use of this, and everyone has to think twice whether she or he needs this really, and whether this trip is absolutely necessary or not. And this could be, of course, on a personal level, but there should be also financial incentives for this, and this will be then up to us on the European level, on the national level, to decide on this. How much traffic do we want to allow, or do we want to I mean, what is the more ecological way of trafficking and traveling? And this is something we have to debate then, and hopefully people can compromise on this and do understand that Fridays for Futures and the next generation should have a say on this and should have a loud voice on this.
Thanks, Viola. Just to conclude, perhaps both of you, can you tell the audience very briefly, and Viola, you mentioned already a couple of things. So what can people do to protect the environment? And also, and that perhaps a bit more for Dadan, what kind of initiatives are already underway in Kosovo? And I hope that you will also mention, of course, our joint Kosovo Sustainable Development Week. So Viola, perhaps just from you, because we're running a bit out of time. So 3 things. What do you think what people can do in their daily lives to protect the environment, knowing also Kosovo a little bit? So what would be the 3 main things, what you would suggest?
I mean, a striking factor is waste. You have mentioned it, Dadan. So waste management is a big issue. So if everyone would be would like to improve the waste management situation, but we could then frame, we have already financed some projects in terms of waste management, but also to reduce waste in the first step. I think this is an important thing, and everyone could be more sensitive on this issue. And of course, traveling is a big issue, and also what kind of logistic you will choose is important. Whether you need an airplane, or whether something is also even longer by train, but nevertheless more environmentally, more climate friendly. And the third thing is, I would say, really talk to your children, listen to your children. They're very, very sensitive. I have 4 kids, and they really educate me in a way where you think, okay, yeah, because they have to live with our heritage. And I don't want to be blamed for not taking care of my kids and for the next generation, where we live in a more or less privileged way, and the next generation 20, 30 years later has to tidy up all the dirty things and have to then really shrinken their spaces of mobility and so on. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Dadan, just also perhaps 3 things, and then you can say a few words about the Kosovo Sustainable Development, and then we have to conclude the webinar.
Well, I would only say one thing: to always speak up and to always try to contribute from where you are, and to always be brave enough to say what you think and to raise your voice for what concerns you most. And I would mention, for example, the initiative of the citizens that to protect the Biodiversity Lake. That was a very huge debate here in Kosovo, and in the end, citizens won. Biodiversity Lake was protected and was saved from the illegal buildings that were planned there. Another initiative, and you mentioned it, Annette, and I'm very proud to be part jointly with the European Union and other actors in it, is the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week, which is a fantastic platform for civil society and for citizens in one hand and institutions in the other, not only to raise the dialogue and to discuss in a sincere way, but also to serve as a platform for us as civil society organizations to positively push some changes that are not possible in other ways. I remember in our first editions of the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week, we were speaking about an energy efficiency fund that was not being established, and now it's a reality. And I'm very, very happy that we could contribute with our questions and with our pressuring attitude towards our politicians to do that. So I'm very, very proud of the work that you, Annette, is doing also with other stakeholders there. As I mentioned, the civil society is slowly but surely transforming itself to a partnership role in informing policies. Institutions have invited us to be part of drafting the new National Energy and Climate Plan, which is a very important initiative. We are also being part in commenting and sending our remarks to the legislative and policy initiatives that are being published in the public consultation platform that the government has established. So I think our role is from day to day is being enforced in not only being a voice that raises concerns and shout outs what is important for the citizens, but also becomes a partner in shaping policies and in putting green ideas and green policies into the agenda.
Good. So I'm afraid we have to conclude this webinar. I would like to thank Dada, and I want to thank Viola so much for their contribution. I think it was very interesting. I think it was also clear, and it is clear, that we have to take care of Mother Nature much more, and we have to appreciate much more than we are doing it in the moment. I wish you all a very happy World Environmental Day. And I think we should perhaps keep that in mind, that every day in the year is a bit of a World Environmental Day. And not only today, and we will hear more on environmental issues from the European Union, from the very big level, but also here in Kosovo with the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week. So thank you again, both of you, and happy Environmental Day to everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Thanks, Dadan.
Thank you. Pleasure as well.